Are you subscribed? Hopefully you are, because there are tacos being held hostage somewhere. And if you're not subscribed, there's serious safety issues involving those very tacos. Particularly, I might go raging on some tacos. But we need to get back to the build on this series here. So we're going to start this episode off as the beginning of the assembly portion of the guitar. Because last we did was finishing the polishing. So now it's actually kind of time to start putting the thing together. So the number one thing that we got to start working on, getting back together, is getting the new truss rod put back into the neck and reattach the fretboard from what we started early in the series, from when this neck pretty much had a curve bigger than Peyronie's disease, and I got the cure. So what we need to do to get this going is to make sure that we need to have all the old glue off. I kind of already did that with this. Compared to other videos that I've seen with people removing their fretboard and the remnants of the glue that was on it, compared to this one did not have really much glue at all, which probably explains why this one came off really easy. So it was a lot easier to clean. Methods I've seen using it is scraping it off, but because I had so little on it on both sides, except for where the truss rod was, all I did was just take, a pretty rigid sanding block, some 320 paper, and just sand it, both pieces, just to where the glue is gone. And you can feel it, there's nothing. But of course not to try to go too overboard, because then you're going to have a raised edge on here. This thing needs to be flush with the neck itself. But let's say if you got a truss rod and it's a little too high, sticking up, even though you've got it all the way down, the only thing I can suggest is you're gonna have to hog out exactly enough in the cavity of the neck to make sure this fits in. And if it's too low, you may have to add some type of material in there. But the whole point is this needs to be flush with the neck. And there's a flat, when it comes to the truss rod like this, there's a flat side and a curved side. The curved side goes down. The flat side has to be flat with the neck. And also kind of test fit anyways, just to make sure. And I put a piece of tape over here just to make sure there's no glue, but that's also the other thing too. I taped up around here. I left myself a little bit of a hair of the edge of here, just because when we go glue it, there's going to be glue seepage out of the edges. It just makes it easier and cleaner to clean it up off the neck. If it's on the tape, it's just preventive measure. Of course, I got myself a few clamps. I got 4 of them. It's probably a little overkill, but it's fine. I'm going to be using this hard block to put on top of the fretboard as I clamp it, just to help kind of distribute the pressure out. You can use a piece of wood or something. I wouldn't really recommend something like a hard piece of metal, especially on your frets here, because you can end up damaging them. And especially, I just did a level and a polish on it. I don't really intend on doing that. At least this has some softness to it, but it's still pretty rigid. Little mallet, whatever, just to push down the truss rod. So that's the first thing we got to put in, is the truss rod. So for now, I'm just going to use that just to keep the headstock being pressed onto the freaking table. Now it's good when it's a snug fit. I can tell you right now, this one fits perfect. Beautiful. So now, going to have to apply some glue. And pretty much my glue for any type of wood project, I always kind of prefer what I think is the best, and it always has the best reviews, is this Type-On 3. It's waterproof, interior, exterior. Super strength, long assembly time, water cleanup, which is good. And it actually dries pretty quick, so. And I've seen other luthiers use this stuff too, so. I'd recommend it. So, apply a bead of glue. Now, also you need some type of disposable brush. Like this is one of those plumber's brushes for wiping on flux for piping and stuff, whatever. But we need it so we can actually spread the glue, not the news. Of course, I want to try to keep a lot of the glue on the neck and not just already flow out. You want to make sure every bit is covered. Doesn't matter if you get some glue on the truss rod. Kind of gives it a half seal in between. I mean, in the end, you're going to want to have some of the seepage out on the side. It means it's got, you know, it's everywhere. Now we got to line it up. Now for now, I got a little glue on my finger, but get that off the board here. For now, I'm going to just take a starter clamp, even though I'm going to use my block, just kind of hold it in place. Same thing with one up here. Now I'm not fully tightening the clamp here. I'm just getting it so I can line everything up. Whoa. That's the thing, when you have a curved neck here, clamp wants to be funny. And like I said, it's not fully on there. Just enough to keep it in place. Now, this one I can press harder. Same thing with this one. And I'm checking, sure I'm aligned pretty well, and cleaning off some glue. Readjust this guy. And if you feel that you want to add more clamps, go ahead. Which I may do, which I'm going to do. Let me get some more clamps. I got a couple more here. Oh, I need it, because I can already see extra glue coming out, which is kind of good. Yeah, this is like a lot of work just to, you know, glue in the neck, but that's what it's supposed to be here. And maybe one more for right there. Now, just when you thought you don't think you need enough clamps, well, too bad, I'm all out of this kind. All my other ones, it'll actually put a mark in you know, the wood here, so I gotta resort to one of these. Yeah, all right, but you know, it is what it is. You know, I said like, hey, this might be overkill with just 4, but yet here I am putting like, what, 7 of them? Yeah, 7 clamps. So now gonna have to let that set for a while. So the only thing we can actually really do in the meantime is we can deal with the body, and we'll come back to this and see what we got here. And if there's a little bit of fine that I can already feel like I don't know if it's my tape, might be or not, because the other side feels good. From where the fretboard meets the neck, there might be a hairline lip. You can always sand that down, no big deal. So next I think we'll do is start, you know, putting the body together. Don't piss me off. Before we actually get on to putting the parts back onto the body, I want to go back to the neck a little bit. Even though what you just saw was instantaneously a couple of seconds ago, for me it was a couple of days. Had to do. So the fingerboard is now attached to the neck. It's all glued and great. Problem you might run into, which is no big deal, is you might get a little bit of a step. I mean, you have to be super duper duper perfect for it to not get a step, but it's no big deal. Of course, you want to be as close and tight as you possibly can. But if you do get a step, which I did, but it was only in a couple little areas, just, you know, start with a small piece of like 400 grit. You know, just go ahead and sand it even with the edge of the fingerboards, no big deal. And then take it all the way up to 800, and then just put a little more of the same finish. If you've refinished this, like I did before, I did it in a semi-gloss. I just use the same stuff and just re-clear it over it. And so my fingerboard and my neck feel really great together. And I already preset the truss rod to this. And I set this to be perfectly straight. Now, I'm going to end up having to go back and kind of do it again after when the strings are all in there and everything else. But for as a baseline, I went ahead and let me get the right settings. This one. Yes, it's this one. No more freaking Peyronie's disease. This thing is straight as a freaking arrow. This thing is nice. And I really suggest using one of these other than, you know, eyeballing it up, whatever. But yes, I got this as perfectly straight as a baseline. Of course, you know, with string tension, it might go up a little bit. But of course, you're going to want to adjust on you know, on how well it plays, and you pretty much need strings and everything set up to really finally dial it in. That's why I didn't even bother to put the cover back on it. In fact, I haven't put anything else on it yet. So, anyway, I mean, technically we can already put the tuning keys on it, but I said we're gonna work on the body. We're gonna work on the body. So what I want to kind of do is do the non-wiring first, some of the easier stuff. So I'm going to start with the string ferrules, and I a while back refinished it. Because I am a certified Cerakote applicator, that's something I don't think any of you are going to be able to get your hands on. Expensive, but Cerakote is basically a ceramic coating, ultra thin. It's super thin, very good for really small that has, like, you know, tight tolerances. Excellent on heat, but you know, if I'm going to be playing that hard and this thing's going to get to 500 degrees or higher, you know, then something's really odd. But anyways, I have access to the stuff, and I decided to use that just because I can. But you don't really need to. You can do it with just paint, just as long as you clean your part up really good. Use the right type of primer. Since these things are metal, you want to use metal etching, and then put, you know, whatever color you want. Make sure it's fully dry. Yada yada yada. So, anyways, tools I really need for this, because all you do is you put them right back into the hole. I got myself, you know, a little small mallet, and I got me a dowel to work as a punch. It's wood, so it's kind of soft, because I don't want to go. So we're going to start with the small ones up here first, and just kind of line it up. Now, obviously with the paint on there, it thickened it up a little bit, which these are kind of tight, but yeah. Hey, string ferrules back in place. Easy enough. So now, gonna have to get set up to do the Schouler bridge here. The STM non-reverse, which I mentioned before in a previous video, that there are two different kinds of this one. Pay attention when ordering, reverse and non-reverse. Most common is this one here, which is non-reverse. But your intonation screws, probably just like if you had a fixed bridge like this one was before, the intonation screws are on this side towards the pickups. But some people like to have them on the outside like a Floyd Rose. And if you want them on the outside, make sure you get a reverse. No, I mean a non-reverse. This one is a reverse. So the screws right here are going to be on the inside. And yes, my personal preference, I prefer the roller bridges, just because I don't like, you know, a blade on it instead, where you have this, the coil, the string, you know, kind of resting on the blades, going click, 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 click as you're bending and tuning, yada, yada, yada. It's sharp. You know, you palm mute, you rest your hand on it, whatever. So, you know, if you have a nice, smooth curve, whatever, unless you have Peyronie's disease, if you have that curve there, will kind of like, you know, it's just easier on your strings. It's not a sharp point. So, anyways, now we're going to get to the point of why I had to do this instead of using the original holes. So the shallower here, its post setup is very thin compared to here. This looks like about a ½ an inch of a hole originally. Well, this looks more like a quarter of an inch. Like I said, they do have an adapter where you can just put, you can use the original whatever threaded post with another threaded one that will take something this thin and put it on there. But when you look at it, it looks like, hey, that was not meant to be there. It's an adapter, it's aftermarket. Yeah. You said I want to try to make it look like this was went for it. And you're not going to really see my plugs that I made for this anyways, because this is wider than that. So, but what we have to do is drill in holes that's going to take this. So I'm going to go reset up for this, get the necessary tools, remove the unnecessary tools, and we're going to go install a bridge, because the other thing we also have to do is we got to put in a ground wire. I'm not doing EMGs in here, but yet these pickups require a battery. So, and it requires to be grounded. Same thing with the kill switch. So we're going to have to ground this as if it was going to have a passive pickup set anyways. So we're going to have to put in a wire through there, which I kept the original wire, so we'll use that. It's just a matter of feeding it through here again, through a much smaller hole. So I'll be right back. All right, got a few tools here that's going to be needed. Obviously, going to have to re-drill the hole. For this, I'm using a 1/4 of an inch bit. This is measured out just a hair over a 1/4 of an inch, which is good because I want it to be able to compress around it and not be loose. Got to pay attention to how deep I want to go. So what I did is I just make sure, as I drop it, just make sure it's threaded all the way in, and then just use that as a measurement and just give me a little bit hair extra, so that way I can actually go down, take this as low as possible if needed. Marked it on my drill bit, just like before, as drilling out, I can't remember what I drilled out, but piece of tape here, and as soon as the tape hits the shavings, as soon as it pushes away, it will tell you you've gone far enough. And I got a bit right here. This one is a 1/8, just to re-drill the ground hole, because it's in, if I can find it again, it's right here. So that's where the ground hole is going to be. I'm using one of these kind because when you get into smaller bits, the length is short, and sometimes you're going to need that extra length. So I'm using one that has, you know, an end like that. Good thing about this is, like, you can use like a screw gun extension, and that will kind of give you extra length in case if you need it, because you have to go at an angle and you don't want your drill to be slamming up against the body. But first, we have to do the holes first, so that way we can actually see the ground hole coming in, because we don't want to go too far and we just would be disastrous. Before I even start, also, remember in the beginning that I pre-drilled the 2 holes in there? That's so I know where to actually drill it again. If I were to not do that and try to figure out now, it'd be a lot kind of harder to see and set up. It's easier to kind of do that in the beginning, but that's why I pre-drill these small little holes, so that way all I got to do is just start from there. So here we go. No turning back now, mother. A little higher. Okay. But if it's too tight, like so, you can do a couple things here. You can just just twist your drill. Now what I want to do is, just to make sure things are good, before I start smacking them in there, to kind of already set it up in here, and just take a look. Okay. My trusty little mallet again. Alright, I got my bridge in, but little thing that kind of happened on this one here, I don't know if you noticed, sometimes it can happen, but of course, you know, when happens, we're here to learn how to fix things on the fly. Sometimes when you're drilling holes, there's a thing that's known as walk-in, where the drill bit just doesn't, even with the start hole, it can start going, and sometimes when you're at a certain angle, you're not going to see it. Some angles you do, some things you don't. This one I didn't notice that it walked. It walked more out, so that means the bridge was harder to put in. This one was perfect, this one was not. So to get this to go back more this way, I hogged a little bit more this way, but of course there's material taken out of here, so now it was super loose. So the remedy I did on that was I just took a scrap piece of very small zip tie, and I put it on, and I kind of shoved it in, wedged it in on the side that I need to fill to push it this way. So literally 3 little pieces right there, you know, pressed it in. So now all I got to do is just take like flush cutters and just trim it up, tap it in. In fact, it'd be easier if I just take this out here, because I made sure it fitted good. And now this is nice and tight, so let's just trim that up. And then clean up around here, around where the bridge goes, and then put it in. So the next thing I need to do is actually test for ground, just make sure the ground is good. So I need to strip this a bit. So I got my voltmeter, set it for continuity, which basically means, you know, when you put the two ends together, it'll give a reading. When it's not, there's nothing. So in other words, if I have one end on the ground wire and one end on the bridge, if nothing changes there, then something's not right. But if I see some reading, any type of reading, means it's good. I'm getting a reading, which means I got continuity, means this is good. This is great. This is fantastic. And just to make sure, bridge sits on there pretty damn good. So now this is taken care of and out of the way. So I think the next thing I want to work on here, battery box. Now it's time to put in the battery box. So first you're going to run both wires out to where the guitar jack is. You know, if any extra dust. Okay, so now it's time to install the battery box. I test fitted it, ran into one little issue, is it was still a little bit tight because of, on here there are these two little bits of plastic on there. It was basically resting on it. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. You can get a Dremel, you can hog it off here, or you can get a sharp little blade and just whittle just a little bit of wood out of it, just the tiniest bit. You'll never see it anyways because you have this whole lip here covering it. And then it test fitted and went on pretty good. So run the wires out through, you know, the two wires, your power wires, out through where your cable jack goes. And press it down. So now I'm going to need to put holes for the screws here. So we need a small drill bit because it's just a small hole and it's a small screw. So using the hole that the battery box comes in, just kind of drill a couple of starter holes. Don't need to go too deep. Grab 4 screws of your choice and just screw them in. Now we're going to leave the black wire out here because the black wire is the negative, which gets soldered into the jack, but the positive wire, the red, has to go back into the wiring cavity. So you got to find the hole that's in here that goes to the wiring cavity and just kind of fish it all the way back. Sometimes it's a little tricky, but there it is. Pull it through. So right now, the only wires we have, so the battery box is the negative, the positive coming out here, and the ground wire that goes to the post for the bridge. So next thing is obviously going to be the real fun part. This part was pretty much the easiest. Going to have to get set up to put in pretty much everything, all the fun stuff, the pickups and all the toggle switches and pretty much all of some of the soldering you got to do. Yeah, this is the fun part. So now I actually have to take time to get set up for that. We're gonna have to go to the bench over there where I have my electrical shit all ready to go, and it's time to actually put in some Devin Townsend Fishman Fluid pickups with a kill switch. Oh, fun. So really, don't piss me off on this one. Might have to time lapse this one, and then I'll explain it afterwards. Well, I guess it's time to start putting the pickups and all the other bullshit in. So maybe do a little bit of unboxing, even though I've unboxed this thing like many times already. What I'm throwing in here is the Fishman Fluids Devin Townsend pickup set. So get rid of the sleeve. Obviously your neck and bridge pickup. And this type is kind of like a plug and play. You know, just slide it in the back. Similar to doing EMGs, but it's not completely solderless because in here we have pots that go with it and you have to solder those. And it comes with, you know, the necessary, the wiring and, you know, stuff for the pickups and battery and whatever. I think this is a type of resistor capacitor. So there's that. And then of course I got a kill switch in here. We'll get to that as we get to that. So first thing I guess what we kind of want to do is kind of need to start wiring up the pots and stuff. And there is a setup on it. I got the wiring diagram over there, but basically one of these is your tone. This is one of these is your volume, and one of these is like your push and pull for your voice 1 and 2, which is also your tone control. Of course, you know, you got a pair of couple in case you're doing like a Les Paul, whatever. He's got different configurations, whether it's 2 volume, 2 volume, 2 tone, 2 volume, 1 tone, 1 volume, whatever. I am doing, of course, 1 volume, 1 tone. That simple. With a 3-way switch, which is the original. So that's what that is. So what I'm going to kind of do is I'm going to go ahead and probably just do this in a time lapse. And I'll also post on here the instructions that I'm doing on here, the wiring diagram that you can get off of Fishman Fluence. But then I'll explain on where I actually put the the kill switch in there, because this has detailed instructions on that. So anyways, time to heat up my soldering iron and get familiar with this. And we're gonna do this.
Stupid time lapse. I'd rather take an hour-long chin lock.
So now we're back over here after all of that wiring. If you kind of notice in that time lapse some breaks in there, because that battery kept dying a lot because, well, it took forever to wire this thing up. One thing I did notice on the pickup set, yeah, it gives you wiring to basically from the pickups to the pots, but it doesn't include like the extra wiring from the jack to the pot or pot to pot or whatever, or switch to pot. So you're gonna have to come up with those on your own, which I had to start digging through all kinds of other stuff, through my other bundles of wires, just to make it work. And of course, you know, also going back and forth figuring out exactly how to put the kill switch in. And by the way, here's the wiring diagram for the Fishman set for this guitar. It is actually pretty straightforward. Just follow it exactly. And then for, let me drop it. I dropped it. Now to add a kill switch like this into that setup, it is pretty straightforward. It's basically 3 wires, and if you're using an active set where you have a battery in it, they usually come with a resistor, because these LEDs don't like 12 volts. They like about 3 volts. So you got to put in the resistor onto the red wire, which is the positive. It takes that 12 volt and turns that little LED light into 3, so you don't blow it. And other than that, the negative, the black wire, goes to pretty much a ground. I'm sorry, no it doesn't. There's actually, here, better yet, let me just show you. So I'll hold it up for you. You can screenshot that. It's basically for any type of kill switch that has an LED in it. The principle is the same. So I know EMG makes, well, there's a specific kill switch if you want to use for EMG actives. Basically, if you don't want to solder or anything. But using one of these, you can use it in an EMG setup the exact same way. You know, you make sure the red wire that goes to this goes to whatever power source you got. If you're using passives, you're going to have to just have its own battery just for that. If not, you wire it into the battery you use for something like this. The negative, because there's like a jumper on it, which will go to the sleeve on your jack, which is basically kind of like the middle one. And the ring is the negative. You know, in other words, it's easier than it looks. Especially if you go by this instructions just for basic stuff. You know, it's so easy to figure out on your own. Now, what I did off camera though is I made it like a little bit of a change. I planned on using the Dunlop strap lock sets for this, but I kind of changed my mind. I kind of took the strap locks I had on my Jackson, because they're a Fender strap lock set, and one of the problems I had with it on the Jackson is the way these go is that this here actually does not go into the guitar. This end does. It just basically it clamps in. But the way the Jackson guitar is, this part would always hits me in the gut, and it was kind of always painful and uncomfortable. Well, for this guitar, it's not going to be that way. It's going to be that way. But the Dunlop set is pretty smooth and flat, so I decided to put the Dunlop on my Jackson, and I'm just going to use the Fender strap locks for this one. So it'll be fine. So I kind of already, put them in just for that. The only thing else really left to do is, other than that, I can show you a quick test. That, oh, by the way, I did test all this just to make sure it works, and I just did the basic easy way, is to plug it in my amp. Take a piece of metal, tap the pickup wherever it is. You'll hear if you have it set right, you'll hear it go click. You'll hear it through the amp making the knocking sound. Same thing for each one. Had that, no issues, no humming issues. And for the kill switch is obviously here. Once you plug it in to the guitar, or actually let me kill this light in here, it might be hard to see it. So once you plug it in, you have your kill switch. And every time you tap it, it's on and off, but it's like, yep. Simple enough. Put my light back on. So, as far as the body goes, well, I don't need to put the bridge in place until I'm ready to put the strings on, because it just fall right off. But need to put the knobs on. I got a set just for fun, little skull looking knobs here. So have everything set to the maximum setting where I tend to have it, and I'm just gonna put it there. Use the supplied Allen key. So basically, at full max, the skulls are at 12 o'clock. There's my Allen key. Okay. I dropped it. So, there you go. And by the way, voice 1 and 2 is on the tone where you pop up and down. Oh yeah. And the back cover plate is on. And I decided to leave, since it had the original sticker and even the plastic, I decided to leave that on because it gives it its originality, something original to it. The fact that was still there is pretty damn cool. So pretty much for the body on this one is done. So next thing to do is now start working on the neck. So I'm going to put this aside and we're going to get the nut glued on it and the tuning keys. All right, time to put this little fucker back on to the neck. It's just basically some super glue. So just pretty much add some glue. Try not to glue it where the truss rod goes. There. And on the back side of the fingerboard. Because like I said, this is freaking type of super glue, so you know how crappy it is to get that on your finger. Now this is an accelerator. It takes super glue and it like instantly sets it. It's basically, I don't know, carbon in a can. Yep, and that's in place. Okay, now we can start playing with tuning keys. So what do I have here? Goto, lock-in, machine heads. It's time to pull all these out. Don't need that. That was a switch for something else. Now, unlike Sprezzels, these ones has a screw that you reuse the original screw holes. Where I used Sprezzels on the Jackson, it doesn't. It has these little nubs. So it's a little less work here. I didn't have to fill that in and make it disappear. One thing I do want to make sure is, yes, some of these, there's going to be at least 2 sets that are the same height as far as the post goes. It should be, even though they're all kind of looking the same. Let me just test one here that looks the same. Same. Let me double check that one. That was like kind of weird. A little bit smaller, but smaller. Okay. All right. So from what I see here, Sprezzels like has 2 that are like, as far as the post goes, this part here, they have a tall one, a medium one, and a short one. The tall one goes for like your thicker gauge to your medium to your thinner gauge strings. This one here, this set here, looks like there's 3 high and 3 low. So obviously the taller ones you're going to want to put for your lowest, your height, well, your thickest gauge strings. So let's get them in here. Now I'm just roughly putting it on. Yeah, so that's kind of, I think, is the common denominator with lock and tuning keys, depending on the brand. But as far as the common denominator is the height of the post. So you might want to keep that in mind. So when you get like a set of 6, don't just think every one of them could work at every spot, because it's probably not going to. Okay, I think this screwdriver might work. If not, I need to get a smaller one. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the screws in the back side. Go back, make sure that first one's tight. Something I'm going to say that's going to make this video pretty much dated, even though this is a Devin Townsend guitar that I'm building on, which would be that type of theme. But I'm wearing a Ghost shirt. This week is when Ghost put in theaters live concert right here, right now. Saw it yesterday. Wow, blew my mind straight from concert video. And the neat thing was, I was actually there during that concert. It was at the Kia Forum in Los Angeles. Can't really see me, I was kind of in the stance part, but there was a reason why that they were really strict on no cell phones for this show. Like, do not even think about it. But yeah, saw it yesterday. I was like, oh wow. Love the story that Tobias Forge does with the band. Okay, now I need to get a little wrench, tying those up. Yeah, 10 millimeter socket or wrench. You don't want to over torque it. You don't want to crack your paint job. There's no reason to make it uber tight, but you really want it good and snug. Pull it up like this so I don't put pressure on the headstock. Alright, lock and keys, nicer looking ones compared to the original ones too. So now we've got the neck done. So what is really left there to do? Yeah, we're there, 2 pieces to 1. So now we can actually join the neck to the body. Oh, by the way, I didn't get to show it off, but I took it into work. I had the plate powder coated. Same thing with the jack part too. I had that powder coated into gloss black. So better than the dirty ugly chrome. So now it's time to put this thing together. I have 2 different sets of screws. Well, 2 large, 2 shorter, obviously for where the wood is at its thickest. Let's do this just to get it pre-started. Pre-started as in threaded into where it's just the tips are barely protruding. All right. Save me a minute here while now I'm not going to drill it all the way, just to help, get it started. And now do the rest by hand. And I like to go to a crisscross pattern just to where I feel a little bit of resistance, and then I start over. kind of like when you change a tire. Basically, we kind of got a guitar again. Yeah. So, I guess the only thing really left for me now, well, actually, you know what? Let's just, because, hold on. Got to do that at least. Got to at least put this part in here. Screw that in. There we go. How's that? So, now it's pretty much time for setup, really. So, I like to keep my, like I said, I mentioned earlier in the series, I keep my old strings just for setup because, you know, I don't give a shit what happens to them. But once everything is all set up, where intonation's dialed in, the neck is at its perfect bow, you know, my action is at the right height, just to where everything is all perfect, then I take the strings off and put new ones on. So, I'm actually going to end this video right here, and the next video would be unveil. So with that, I guess you're going to have to wait. Too bad.